Enough is enough. I just notified Governor Walz we will begin auditing Medicaid receipts and defer paying on claims based on fraud, waste, and abuse. Until we can verify what is legitimate, we're going to defer payments for the 14 programs that the state itself identified as rife with fraud. That figure could be in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
A bombshell letter from Dr. Mehmet Oz, administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz said the federal government is putting Minnesota's Medicaid program under intense scrutiny. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services warned Minnesota Governor Tim Walz that billions of taxpayer dollars may be at risk due to widespread fraud, waste, and abuse inside the state's Medicaid system. The letter, dated January 6, 2026, comes from CMS Administrator Dr. Mehmet Oz, and it pulls no punches. According to the letter, investigations by CMS, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the HHS Inspector General have uncovered widespread fraud, waste, and abuse, billing for services never provided, services billed at levels unsupported by documentation, exploitation of vulnerable Medicaid recipients, and repeated failures by the state to implement safeguards. Federal law enforcement also identified complex fraud schemes involving networks of providers operating across multiple high-risk Medicaid service categories, including Minnesota's home and community-based services system. CMS says 14 high-risk Medicaid programs alone consume $3.75 billion every year in federal and state taxpayer funds. Even more alarming, CMS data shows extraordinary growth in provider enrollment and payments, growth that does not match patient needs or service usage trends. CMS is launching a focused federal review of Minnesota's Medicaid program and will closely examine quarterly CMS 64 receipts, defer future federal funding if fraud findings continue, initiate non-compliance processes for upcoming funding periods, and exercise its full legal authority to oversee state actions.
At CMS and HHS, we're increasingly worried about the deep rot within Minnesota's Medicaid and social services system, which are supposed to protect the most vulnerable Americans. The more we uncover, the more it becomes clear it's much worse than we were led to believe by state government officials. We had previously learned that illegal immigrants were still getting care within allegedly state-only Medicaid programs that were actually using federal taxpayer funds. And because of that, we already withheld $1.3 billion from California, Illinois, and yes, Minnesota, which always seems to show up on the list of states with the worst fraud, waste, and abuse. But this is only the tip of the iceberg for Minnesota. We have an unfortunate announcement for the Walz administration. They have to admit they were warned. Last month, we instructed the Walz administration to produce a corrective action plan by the end of the year, which we received late New Year's Eve and found deeply insufficient. We don't want to hear, for example, that your state law doesn't allow you to protect federal taxpayers from Somali fraud. And we want a sense of urgency to fix this, as well as clear milestones to hold Minnesota accountable on progress. Enough is enough. I just notified Governor Walz we will begin auditing Medicaid receipts and defer paying on claims based on fraud, waste, and abuse. Until we can verify what is legitimate, we're going to defer payments for the 14 programs that the state itself identified as rife with fraud. That figure could be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. If the state cannot get a handle on this fraud, as we find more, we intend to withhold more payments moving forward until the state cleans up its act. This ensures that Minnesotans who are truly in need and eligible for benefits can access Medicaid services, but the state's going to be forced to clean up its act and stop wasting taxpayer dollars. The state mismanaged its program, and federal taxpayers should not be held liable. We should note that Governor Walz has a rainy day fund with plenty of money to cover any real shortfalls in the unlikely event these actions affect beneficiaries directly. This, my friends, is about holding Governor Walz accountable and making him take the steps he should have taken years ago. This is just the beginning. While there are 14 Medicaid programs that we know are high risk, we suspect from our team on the ground that there's a long road ahead to clean up the fraud. We want the people of Minnesota to know that this hardship was caused by a complete abdication of duties by the Walz administration, which your state leaders need to own and address immediately. Our duty is to provide the highest quality health care for the most vulnerable Americans, so we can't allow further theft of federal taxpayer money from 49 states to underwrite fraud in Minnesota. We'll have more to say in the weeks ahead.
In other words, Minnesota could lose or face delay in federal Medicaid money unless major reforms are implemented. Federal officials say Minnesota's Medicaid system is vulnerable to abuse, and unless the state acts swiftly, taxpayer dollars and care for vulnerable residents could be at risk. Earlier, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz abruptly ended his re-election bid, declaring he has zero regret as a widening fraud scandal rocks the state.
2026 is an election year. Election years have a way of ramping up the politics at a time when we simply can't afford more back in Minnesota. In September, I announced that I would seek a historic third term as Minnesota's governor. And I have every confidence that if I gave it my all, we would win the race. But as I reflect on this moment with my family and my team over the holidays, I came to the conclusion that I can't give a political campaign my all. Every minute that I spend defending my own political interests would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who want to prey on our differences. So I've decided to step out of this race, and I'll let others worry about the election while I focus on the work that's in front of me for the next year. I'm passing on this race with zero sadness and zero regret. I did not run for this job to have the job. I ran for the job to do the job. Minnesota faces enormous challenges this year, and I refuse to spend a single minute doing anything other than rising to meet this moment. Minnesota has always come first and always will. That's what I believe servant leadership demands of me. As an optimist, I'll hold out some hope that my friends on the other side of the aisle will consider what servant leadership demands of them in the moment. We can work together to combat against the criminals. We can work together to rebuild the public's trust and make our state stronger. But make no mistake about it. If Republicans continue down the path of abusing power, smearing entire communities, and running their own fraudulent game at the expense of Minnesotans, I will fight back with everything that I have. I am absolutely confident a Democratic and a DFLer will hold this seat come November. I'm confident that I'll find ways to contribute to the state that I love long after next January. But there'll be time to worry about all that later. Today, I'm proud of the work we've done to make Minnesota America's best place to live and raise kids. From our new paid leave policy, to our child tax credit, to our school lunch programs feeding every single child. And I'm doubly proud of the incredible team we put together to make this vision a reality. I want to take a moment to thank every member of my staff, to every single state employee who has been part of this fight. Now more than ever, I need you on the job. I need you to help work together to tackle the important work in front of us. And most of all, I want Minnesotans to know how grateful I am for the opportunity to serve this state, for the privilege that I have been given to serve in this office. I'm on the job. I'm focused on making sure that we stay America's best place to live and raise kids. No one will take that away from us. I'm proud of the way we treat our neighbors. I'm proud of the way that we welcome people to this state. I'm proud of the way that we innovate. And I'm proud of the way that we are optimists for the future. No one's taking this away from us. Not the fraudsters. Certainly not this president. Not on my watch.